Hey everyone, welcome to Tech Down Over. Today, we've got a fun show. Joining me today, Harold Muliati. He is running the Video Switcher mixer and co-hosting. He does all the hard work. Jeff Blanchard could not make it today. He is, well, I think he's actually playing with his brand new Sennheiser MKH416 mic. That's what I think he's really doing, but I can't prove it. So he'll be back next week. And we've got a great guest today. He's on for, I think, his third visit. I missed the second one. Darn, I was traveling. Juan Carlos, I'll call him the King, Bagnell. The King. He's kingly.
Wow.
Like he's great. You're a king today. Here we go.
I was named after the King of Sweden.
Yeah. How are you? This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation at www.relate.com. Your training and video partner. Oops. We have two intros? There goes Howard. Did I say who's switching today? We've got Juan Carlos with us today. How you doing?
I'm sorry about the second intro. I'm not used to your control board like at all here, and it's so weird that I would be remote controlling as the guest. I don't know how that happened. I'm so sorry.
It does happen, though. No, we try hard to stop it. But anyway, hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's been we're right into that harvest season of phone and tech reviews and stuff. So I'm in the middle of it, and you know this is the most exciting place to be right now.
It is, and it's fun. You know, we were talking a tad pre-show about phones and what phones to choose, and I just got, about a month ago, I got the, this is probably my fourth Note. I got the Note 10, the Note 10 Plus from Samsung, and I like it. It's okay. I have got it in my carrying case here, and yeah, it's a big phone. It's got a great screen. I like that. But it's got things that irritate the living daylight out of me, like dictation. I like to dictate my text messages. A friend of mine lives in Canada, and I was sending him messages the other day because he was down here recording a lynda.com session, or actually LinkedIn learning session. And so I sent him a whole note, and he writes, "Call 911 quick, you're having a stroke." It's like, what? So all of a sudden I looked at what I dictated. I went, oh my God, I am having a stroke. It was in another language. It was in English, but nobody could understand it. The words were so bad. It was so, everything was totally misunderstood. I was going, my God, what happened? This used to work really well on my previous Note 9 and the 8 and the 5 or whatever. Even the one that blew up actually worked okay until it blew up. But
poor Note 7.
Poor Note 7. Mine never blew up, but I gave it back in because I had no choice. But this thing is just awful at dictate. I don't know what happened. It's like, what the heck are they doing or not doing? And
I mean, you know, it's one of those interesting things. You know, we think we've got a feature locked, and then from phone generation to phone generation, it's like we still need that refinement. We still need that attention to detail. There was just recently an announcement about a 0-day exploit in Android. You know, some pretty serious, like someone could get a hold of your device and get into some sensitive information.
Interesting.
But this was an exploit that was solved 2 or 3 generations of Android ago. But again, as phones progress, as software gets more complicated, Google lost sight of some of this code, and now we're going to have to look at another round of patches for current phones to make sure that they're protected against this exploit again. So even we take some things for granted, but even something as simple as speech to text and dictation can be hard to keep pace with all of the other things, because Samsung just they write so much custom software for their phones. Yep. It might be some little tweak in how the microphones are listening for your voice is just different.
That's what I think, because it is really messing up. We have a restaurant near here called Bistro 13. So I call it Bistro 13. And it goes Beast Row. Beast Row, R-O-W. I thought, no. So I tried a couple ones. Well, it came out with breast so So I was going, this is bad.
And I would just say, again, because it's Samsung, you want to look at those differences between, are you using Google Assistant? Are you using Samsung software? Are you using Bixby? Is this a search that's taking place in an Android app or in a Samsung service? I mean, all of these things
it's
can
a
have
text messaging,
a surprisingly
which is not
big.
Bixby. Yeah, but it's amazing how they messed it up. And I was going, this used to work perfectly. And I went on my wife's phone. She's still on the Galaxy 8. She goes, have an upgrade. I'm waiting for something. And it's either going to be the 11 or something else. But anyway, so I got on hers, dictated. Everything's perfect. No problem at all. So I was going, that's an irritant. I do a lot of messaging where I'm dictating. I just don't have time to type with my fingers. I'm lousy at it. And so that enough is, I was going, maybe I'll go back to an iPhone. And then I go, oh man, maybe I am having a stroke. So,
but I think, in phrasing, in sort of framing the conversation that way, it's, I would just say it's important to also consider that there are more than two companies out there. I know they make up like 80% of, United States smartphone sales, but I'm sitting in front of some LGs and a Sony and some OnePlus, and I've got, there are other things you might want to take a look at.
That's true.
Just
now,
because Samsung's letting you down.
You know who I used to love, and they're basically kind of not there anymore. I'm trying to remember what they're called right now. It was called the Max, the original Max, the One Max.
Motorola?
HTC.
Oh, HTC.
That was a great
HTC,
big phone. They were a great company, and then they just sort of, they're there, sort of. You don't hear much about them.
That's what I'm hoping to see in 2 weeks. Again, like I was saying, we're in smartphone harvest season right now, is the next Pixel. Because I would say a good chunk of the top talent phone manufacturers who were at HTC are now over at Google.
Are they really?
A lot of that DNA... Yeah, a lot of that DNA in smartphone manufacturing is now under the Pixel umbrella.
HTC's still there, though. They're right. They haven't gone under.
Yeah, but we haven't heard anything from them this year.
In a while.
The top of the line HTC phone was mostly sort of distributed regionally overseas, and I don't believe they've come out with the new premium flagship since last year.
Yeah.
So we expect that they'll probably put something out for next year, but they might be going to more of a TikTok cycle, and they might be looking at a much smaller distribution than something that you could fulfill here for the United States.
Now, isn't it funny how they were the number one Android phone for a long time? How things change.
I mean, you never want to take position for granted. I believe we're seeing the beginnings of that with smartphones in general.
Yeah.
Where consumers are not flipping phones as aggressively. We're not seeing new adoption rates. We've seen the smartphone market kind of plateau. And there's a lot of consumer frustration over devices that are well over $1,000 now.
That's a
I
lot
don't
of
think
money
5G
now.
is really going to move the needle on that.
And
that's why I think we're seeing Samsung and Apple seriously start paying attention to the mid-range. OnePlus pivoted in 1 year from their Pro device to the 7T, where it's now for $600. That is a stonking powerful phone. I've been breaking that one in most recently. So I think we're starting to see the shift of smartphones as this sexy, exciting lifestyle companion device into you have to have one. It's totally a commodity. What are you really getting when you buy this phone? And I think a lot of consumers have realized that they've been overbuying for years under this promise of amazing, revolutionary performance. But they're still doing the same basic things on their phone that they've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, and it really hasn't gotten that much better.
You're right. In fact, every time I get a new Note, it feels just like the kind of old Note. There's some small changes, but
that's a major conversation I've been trying to have on my channel recently, where you get out of an Apple press conference or Samsung press conference, and they promise you revolutionary new performance. So there is more powerful hardware going into every generation of phone, but there's also a component where what is the user really trying to do during their day? And if you're not trying to do something more aggressive from a mobile device, if you're still doing the same social media communications, maybe playing a little game, playing a few games on it, a little gaming, you're not going to see a drastically different experience on a phone today than you saw from a phone in 2017.
No. I mean, I'll tell you what I noticed on the 10 Plus from Samsung, the Note, that it is faster. but not in anything as you're doing it. It's faster at getting email, for example. The email's instant now, whereas there was a little bit of a lag before. It's faster at receiving messages and send. It's just those little things are noticeable, but that's anything you're doing. It loads faster, maybe launches some things.
You spent $1,000 on a slightly faster modem.
Faster, yeah. Because I was going, I don't see much of a difference, really. I don't. It's like that was fun.
So, because I don't want to. Because I know the last couple of times I've been on your podcast, I have a tendency to soapbox and let me tell you what's wrong with the telecommunications industry and the FCC, and so I don't want to do that this time. But the flip side of that, the positive side of that is I feel because the phone is such a commodity. And I really do feel there are reasons why someone might want to pick up a premium, expensive device. The trouble is getting that conversation out in a way where we can talk about the phone disrupting other products. Right. Samsung wants to have a conversation about you buying a $2,000 fragile folding tablet, and I don't think that's the gig. Instead, we're seeing Windows start to embrace ARM. Microsoft just had a huge press conference announcing a whole ton of new Surface devices.
That was interesting, wasn't it?
One of them, the Surface X, is an ARM-based chipset.
And did you notice one other thing too? Here's an ergonomic thing that's totally different. They're going back to 3:2 aspect ratios.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Surface has tried to maintain, I think, a slightly squarer. I mean, they've been sort of riding that, especially with the Surface Pro. But again, it's pen touch computing. It makes sense. You'd want something more in line with like a piece of paper, not widescreen for watching cinema content. But to get back to the point about ARM, what a lot of consumers aren't going to understand is going to a mobile style ARM chipset is very similar to what you currently have in a phone or tablet today. And when you do some performance testing, when you're trying to compare different apps and services, a phone from last year can easily rival the type of experience that you'd get from $1,000, $1,500 ultra slim laptop. So what I've been trying to do is try and push a little bit more aggressively into what can I do with the phone. And things like video editing and rendering is faster on a phone than it is on a $1,500 consumer laptop. The gaming experience is perfectly capable of rivaling what you might be able to do on a Nintendo Switch. It's just we need to start highlighting the games that are better and aren't just those terrible garbage mobile gotcha microtransaction hell types of games. Once we start expanding the conversation there, there are some better arguments for why you might want to push into this territory, and that's not going to come from Apple or Samsung. Samsung doesn't want to disrupt their laptop or their tablet division. They want you to have 4 or 5 devices that are full computers with full operating systems. But if we get a few more good accessories coming out, we'll be able to see where you take your phone and you're making a phone call. You plug it into a tablet slate and it becomes a tablet. You plug it into a laptop dock where it's just a screen and a keyboard and a touchpad and a big battery, and you've got a laptop. And there's a good argument for plugging it into some kind of caddy at home, and that could be your computer. I mean, we're pretty much there. We just lack a few of those pieces to help kind of tie the ecosystem together. And that to me becomes a good consumer disruption point. I'd be much happier about spending $1,000 on a phone, which is a very, very capable, beastly, high horsepower device, if it could prevent me from also wanting or needing another $1,500 laptop and another $600 tablet and maybe another $1,000 desktop. Then that $1,000 phone becomes an incredible bargain, but it's going to take a while to get that messaging out to consumers because the market leaders are Apple and Samsung. So Apple and Samsung want you to own multiple glowing rectangles to achieve very granular differences in computing performance.
And it's so funny you're saying that. As I know a lot of business travelers, and I'm a business traveler occasionally, and
for sure,
I go with my laptop. I've got either a Lenovo or an Alienware that I'll take with me, more for business or for podcasting or whatever we're doing. Take that with me. I put my iPad in there. I have an iPad Pro and the smaller iPad Pro. I've got both of the sizes. So I'll put the smaller one with me usually.
So what,
and,
we're at
and then I get a Kindle and I take my Kindle. And I
Five
just go,
operating systems. Five
and I've got my phone,
now.
and I go,
Okay.
this is so ridiculous.
Good. So I feel like there's still room for very targeted and specific kinds of experience. You know, like your phone isn't going to disrupt a full frame mirrorless camera. You know, like
no.
For as good as these phone cameras are, and they are really good now.
They're good.
Obviously, a purpose-built, dedicated piece of machinery isn't going to replace that. And
Well,
people like to kind of. Oh, go ahead.
And for example, we're photographers. I do photography. Harold does photography. You're a photographer. You've written books. I will do a shameless plug for you. He's got a good photography book. But I do. We all do stuff like that. And photography is a hell of a lot of fun. And it's fun on the phones. But boy, there's something about having the big camera in your hand and just having unlimited photographic power that's even more fun sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
I just got a 90D from Canon, which I swore I'd never buy another DSLR in my life again. So what do? I buy a DSLR again.
You got to come back occasionally. You come back.
Yeah,
but,
you do.
But
and
again,
I like it
awesome.
because it's half mirrorless and half DSLR.
Yeah.
When you're doing video, it's a mirrorless camera, like it or not. I don't mind. I've got GH5s, GH9. I know the G9. I've got the GH5s. I love Panasonic with their mirrorless. And I still like Canon. And Harold's got a 5DSR, so he's got almost a medium format camera right in his palm all the time. And they're fun. They're fun. But it's also fun when you start taking pictures with your phone and videos and go, man, that was so easy.
Well, I guess there is the thing, like, actually you were saying in a relatively recent video, Juan, about like when you're doing the shooting on your phone and then you're doing, say, the editing on your phone too, then that just that can speed up things just because you don't have the transfers between different devices if you have this thing that you're talking about, where you have laptop disruption, where you're basically using the same device for 5 different roles.
Yeah, I can't even necessarily claim credit for discussing this. There's an entire community of, I mean, if you go to Twitter and you search hashtag MOJO, MOJO, mobile journalism, where we have been pushing the boundaries on phones easily since the iPhone 5. Yeah. And I jumped into this probably around 2015, 2016, where I was doing a lot of travel. I wasn't wanting to pack a super expensive gaming laptop to use as some sort of mobile video workstation. And it was shocking. It was shocking how easy it was to kind of replace some of this stuff with a phone. And again, we're talking about a phone from 2016, and not terribly disrupt my workflow out in the field. So where the editing process might be a little slower, and because you're working on a smaller screen and you're doing touch input and you're not, you don't have a mouse and keyboard, you don't have all of your macros and keyboard commands. While that might slow you down, I was literally putting video files into a timeline as I was shooting them. So you are so aggressively ahead of the curve. When you sit down to finish off the video, my timeline was set, and I was able to just slap a voiceover directly under it. And the mics on some of these phones were good enough for me to record voiceover in real time directly into the device. So again, it wasn't like I was having to manage with file transfer or anything like that.
Right.
That's only gotten better over the last couple of years. And like I said, and if you have a thin and slim $1,500 premium nice consumer laptop to render 4K video, it's usually 4-to-1 slower to arrive at the same video quality than what you can do on a phone. So we're talking 50 megabit, 4K, 60 frame per second video. Obviously not something that you'd want to produce and finish a feature film going to Sundance on, but the practicalities of cutting video and producing segments, news, YouTube, vlogging, even just your family videos. Every one of my videos now has just like a little bit of an edit to it. And that pays off. Like my family, they're not sitting there and going, oh, I really like what you did with this 3-second transition as you were going from this part. Like they're not doing that. Oh, I very much appreciate that you put a soundtrack on there, but they appreciate the effort. Yeah. That video was nicer. It's not just shaky, raw, handheld smartphone footage. It was obviously a little care and a little attention went into me making something nicer for you. And that pays off too. So outside of just the professional realm, we can see that Samsung and Apple are starting to take video editing more seriously because they've put it into their announcements and their keynotes. They're just 3 years behind all of the people that have really been doing this on other phones and other platforms, and they're just now catching up to what we've already been taking for granted. Again, it's just trying to get the message out there as we're starting to see things like advanced desktop modes. You can plug your phone into a monitor and then it shows up like a proper computer.
Yep.
You can work with a mouse and a keyboard. We're going to see docks where, like I was describing, it's a screen and a battery and a keyboard and a touchpad with, USB ports on it. So your phone can already take advantage of that. And before you get the dock, I mean, you can go and get one of these like laptop expanders. So you haven't lived until you've plugged in an Android phone and you have HDMI, a memory card slot, dual USB, and you can connect your phone to Ethernet. And it all works. And it works really well. So this is already like, we're already on the cusp. You can turn your phone into a computer for like $50. This is it. This is all you need.
Apple did something, I think, on the new one where they finally opened it up so that you can add external storage to it. Which, of course, begs, can you actually record to it live? I don't know. I haven't tried that yet. I don't have an iPhone right now.
Apple's file management strategy is still a lot more cumbersome than it needs to be. The thing about iOS, and my experiences on iOS 13, they have been getting better. There is a file manager app, finally. We've had that for about a year now. But the major changes seem to be coming to iPad OS. So the greater flexibility of being able to plug in storage, Apple doesn't, for whatever reason, they don't want to give that to a phone.
No.
They want you to have a phone and an iPad Pro. And now you can use iPad OS, which is essentially the same thing as iOS, but with... That would be a really helpful thing to have in your pocket too. It's just we haven't been granted.
Do you think part of that is that the iPhone was never known to be that fast, and that's one reason? I don't know. They're pretty fast right now. I don't know how fast they are at video editing. Well, Androids, I think, are faster.
Well, again, this is getting. I got into a huge fight. A 3-day Twitter tirade. With iOS fans after the iPhone announcement, where Apple can rightfully make claims about the A-series chipsets being a generation more powerful than what you get on Android devices. This is all very well understood and easily benchmarked with synthetic benchmarks. The problem is, what does Apple let developers do with that horsepower? And it doesn't seem to translate to a lot of real world performance.
Interesting.
So if we're just talking about a simple straight up video render test to video render test on my favorite video editing platforms for iOS and for Android, it's not hard to beat an iPhone with a much older Android device. And we see updates in Android from year to year pay off with greater performance benefits than what we've seen with iOS from year to year. The test I like to point to is video editing in iMovie. My iPhone SE can largely keep pace, and sometimes best my iPhone XS, depending on what I'm working with. With the exact same video files, rendering 4K video, we haven't seen these 20% every year where they show the bar graph, right? Blue line is better than gray line, but they haven't given us any numbers. Like, it's just a bar graph with no numbers on it to tell us what it is that we're seeing in the supposed performance benefit. So again, a lot of these things are very application specific, and it's hard to untangle what's real world and what's just marketing speech at this point.
You said something
that's
earlier.
Why I test this stuff.
You said something earlier which reminded me of something. I talked to a CTO of a pretty large database company. I'll leave them unnamed right now. And years ago, they came out with their version of their database. It was mostly running on Unix platforms. And I said, it's running a lot faster now. And he goes, no. He goes, the hardware is running faster. The software is actually 75% slower. It hasn't improved in years. I went, good point. So he said, programming is just not that efficient nowadays. He goes, however, the machines are so much faster. It makes it look like everything's faster. But code optimization is kind of a thing of the past because you had to in the old days. Now you don't have to. You have a lot more memory now. You've got more disk space or SSD space or whatever. And so nobody seems to tune for it. And so that's part of why we see hardware getting a lot
definitely
faster,
agree.
but the software not so much.
Well,
So again, when we talk about these performance claims year over year, it's difficult to judge. It's really, I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to find ways that you can compare real world performance on services that people might use, as opposed to this sort of convenient shorthand of throwing up bigger numbers from a synthetic benchmarking app. I'm actually putting out a video today between the OnePlus 7 Pro and the OnePlus 7T. And a lot of people would just casually say, oh, the 7T has the newer Snapdragon processor, so it's better. And it's not easy to verify that. It's very difficult to quantify that. And then you get into other things too, where the performance of the 7 Pro might actually be better in longer run situations because OnePlus built cooling hardware into that phone. Okay. So your thermals stay lower, so you can maximize performance from that chipset, even though it's 15% slower in graphics. You can run it at its maximum longer than you can a phone that doesn't have that hardware. So just a tease as to what I'm going to be talking about in that video, spoiler. But it's never as cut and dry as just one point to the other. But this, again, it kind of feeds into this. I'm not asking this as a gotcha question, but people asking, should I upgrade my phone? If you have a phone from the last 2 years and it's still in reasonably good shape, the first thing I'm going to ask is, what are you doing on it? If you're trying to push into aggressive use, if you're trying to render video, if you're doing some like console grade gaming, then yeah, I think now is a good time to flip a phone as we get into the end of this year. But if you're mostly just covering the basics with social media and some turn-by-turn navigation and taking a couple photos, I don't think we see it. I don't think we see where that $1,000 phone is really outperforming a $700 phone from 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, there is one great advantage. When you have the newer phones and you have GPS, they can get you lost much faster. Just saying.
We've been getting better, but
they're pretty good.
Still, it's always the good advice of like put enough faith into machines, but don't put all your faith into the machines.
No, it's funny. Do you know Larry Jordan? He does a lot of video reviews and video training and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know him, but I
met him a couple of times, and he's been on the show a couple of times. Well, Larry had some benchmarks, and he always says benchmarks are the biggest BS out there because especially a lot of the things like the speed tests and all that, he goes, yeah, they're great. They show how fast hardware is, but they don't show how fast hardware is in the real world. And I went, interesting. Because he was really into Drobos. And I have Drobos. I like the Drobos. Yeah. And I had a Promise RAID as well. And the Promise beat the Drobo 4-1 on speed tests. The Drobo killed the Promise in real life rendering and previews and playback and 4K. Yeah. I was like, wow, what happened? And Larry says they do better read writing in the real world than the other ones do. The other ones are just focused on real fast transaction, non-transaction based, because go.
Well, and I had a really insightful conversation with Intel. As we started seeing some of their new storage and memory products coming out. And again, it's a lot of these benchmarks. I mean, if we're talking about storage specifically, a lot of those benchmarks are built off of sort of an older notion of how read-write worked on a spinning platter. I mean, we're still kind of performing the same types of tests, and I think it's safe to say most consumers have moved to some kind of flash storage, especially if like your primary computing experience is a phone. There's not a spinning disk in a phone. So why would we continue to keep judging read-write by the way that a needle used to have to, like old school record player style, interact with different parts of a disk? And so a lot of the more random interactions and a lot of the more a lot of the benchmarks that we didn't used to value now become more effective for talking about solid state and especially these newer Gen 4 PCIe hard drive solutions that are going to be coming out. But again, we've been so comfortable, and the same thing happens with smartphones, and the same thing happens with laptops, and the same thing happens in storage and databasing and all this stuff. We've been so comfortable with a certain terminology and with a certain vernacular that it's hard to quantify those differences. You actually have to explain again. and bringing consumers or bringing, like IT departments on, a lot of those folks don't want to sit down and relearn something that they were familiar with or that they were comfortable with. So especially for my testing, I like to show a synthetic benchmark. But then I want to back that up immediately with, it's very important to me to be able to render video on the go. Let me show you what this looks like on this phone versus on this phone. Do you really get any type of advantage in buying this or in buying that? And that's a very specific test. It's a very granular test that's not going to apply to most of the people out there that are shopping a phone, but it's something that I can very, very easily visually demonstrate, as opposed to, let me just run the synthetic benchmark and now here's a bar graph. I mean, I feel like that's a little bit more valuable and it's a little bit more practical. But we need to find more of that. We need to find more opportunities to showcase those differences.
And you made a great point about how we are using old tests based on spinning platters. It's very, very different. Oh, yeah. The speed is just not even comparable. How many phones are still adding extra storage? Because Apple never did. I don't think they ever will, which is a shame. Android does so far. I don't know how long they'll keep doing that. How many other phones are still adding micro SD cards or something, which are great. It gives you the ability to put a whole mess more stuff on a phone.
Quite a bit of the Android ecosystem is still doing it. Okay. You've got OnePlus, I think, is an example of a manufacturer that can rightfully claim just everything on their phone is focused for class-leading performance. Okay. They are little track racer phones. They strip out everything that might get in the way of making their phone look and feel and perform as fast as they possibly can. So, they were the first to upgrade the storage to a new faster storage standard, UFS 3.0. Yep. They were the first to just start putting in ridiculous amounts of RAM. So they're one of the companies that you would point to and say they don't allow for expandable storage. Again, anything that might slow down the perceived performance of their phone, because they can't control what kind of memory card the consumer is going to put in there. Yeah. So the other company that I think has never really adopted or embraced, funnily enough, is Google. From the Nexus to the Pixel, they have always kept sealed up. You can't expand storage there. The company that I think has been a little disappointing at the second half of 2019 is actually Samsung, where expandable storage, headphone jacks, these things that they used to tout as metrics, as like, this is one of the reasons why you buy into our platform, you buy into our ecosystem, and we'll make commercials making fun of Apple, that Apple doesn't let you do this stuff. Yep. They're now the ones that are following Apple's lead, like they kind of always have in terms of marketing and messaging. But now they're also saying like, oh, well, we can make more money if we make the headphone experience as painful. Apple did. Yep. Oh, Apple went out and bought Beats. We'll go out and buy a.k.a. For as much as they like to try and talk like there's still this disruptor upstart company, a lot of their recent moves have come directly out of Cupertino's playbook.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
But for expandable storage, LG, Sony, Motorola on a lot of their phones, I think, still offer expandable storage. I mean, it's still out there. It's going to be one of those things where the writing is on the wall for some of these features that set Android aside. I think they will start to go away on most premium flagships because there's too much money in making you buy something else, or in making, we've got a 128 gig option or a 512 gig option. And you're like, well, awesome. I would like to just add a memory card, but I guess I'll just have to upgrade and buy the bigger storage option because I can't. I can't anymore.
And I mean, the thing I like about the expansible memory is that you can have multiple cards and swap them out if you really need a lot of different storage, or like you have different stuff on the different cards, but you can't do that if it's just internal.
Well, you said something on one of your podcasts recently where you were talking about how you filled up a 128 gig drive on one of the phones like that, shooting at a trade show for like 3-4 days.
So yeah, I was doing, and this wasn't even me doing the main video production. I was covering Computex for Newegg, And Newegg was handling all of the official coverage. But what I like to do is also just back it up, like behind the scenes and just some of the fun lifestyle stuff. And so on my personal channel, I'll do a daily vlog. And doing a vlog every day is really easy when you're producing it all on your phone. You shoot from your phone. As soon as you're done shooting, you drop the video into that timeline. And at night, you arrange all of your clips and you push render, and there's your video. I mean, it's so fast. But I started shooting on a Monday, and by Thursday morning, I had completely filled a 128 gig card because all of that was shot 4K. A lot of it was shot 4K 60 frames per second, so I could render a 4K 30 frame per second and try and play with like a little slow-mo or some speed ramping, stuff like that. So those video files were huge, especially because I was on an LG. So those were 80 megabit per second 4K video files. Now I've moved over to a 256 gig card in my daily driver. I will be very sad when these expandable features go away. But like I said, I think it's pretty clear eventually every other manufacturer gets on board because they can make it more painful for you to buy the base model, and then they can charge you more to pull it out. The one nice thing about Android, not that I'll say that this is a benefit from individual manufacturers, but just Android on its own, is that it is pretty easy to just pop in a flash drive or a portable hard drive. You don't have to power it. Like on my iPhone, I can't use my really nice Kingston flash drive because it needs power. So I have to plug in a power, like an AC adapter to power this flash drive for the iPhone. It will be a little bit easier in Android land to move stuff back and forth or to have backups. But again, you have to have a USB connector or dongle or another storage medium or another storage device. So that's going to be a bummer compared to just having a memory card in the phone. But at least you can do it with a bit more flexibility than what you can do in iOS.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think one of the best or better Android devices is right now to look at? You mentioned was it OnePlus one of your favorites?
That's the thing. I really want us to get back to conversations about fitting the right tool to the right job. Right now, I think the messaging is so heavily focused on Samsung Galaxies and Apple iPhones that consumers miss out on products which might actually be a better fit for what they really need. You can always turn to a OnePlus for a hot rod phone that costs around the same as the lower tier iPhone. Even the OnePlus 7 Pro is around the same price as the iPhone 11. And I would say there are very good reasons where you would be looking at just hardware to hardware why the OnePlus 7 Pro might be a better fit for someone. Asus is bringing back some phones to the United States. They're unlocked. You're not going to find them in a carrier store, but for around that $500 to $600 price tier, you get high performance and a flip out camera, so that you use your nice cameras when you take your selfie, not the crap front facing camera. It's the high quality rear facing camera flips out and then you use that. I mean, Sony really impressed this year with the Xperia 1, where you have a UHD resolution display. It's really tall, skinny form factor. I'm a huge fan of LG if you're into multimedia, just because not only do they keep a headphone jack, but that headphone jack is audiophile grade. It is. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can say, oh, well, that's your opinion. It's not an opinion. This is a headphone jack that rivals digital audio standalone media players, and it's phenomenal. If you want to plug studio grade 600 ohm headphones into your phone, or if you just want to spruce up like how your compressed music sounds, this is the phone. The LG phones are the phones to consider. Motorola still makes great mid-rangers. The Pixel is always the first pick if you want top-tier software support, because the software is coming directly from Google. I mean, that's what's frustrating is, it's not that I would say, oh, well, if you don't want to play with Samsung, then go and buy an LG. It's if you want to make sure that you're spending the right amount of money for the features and performance that you want, you're probably not going to get it with an iPhone 11 Pro or a top-tier Samsung Galaxy. Instead, you want to look at what the rest of the market has to offer, and you'll probably get exactly what you need and still be able to spend less at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what happens too? And you know this one. You go to Verizon, you go to AT&T, wherever you are, and they're pushing two main phones.
Oh, big time.
Big time.
Big time.
Big time. They don't even give you options. You can see one. Oh, what's that one? You don't want that one. Oh. And they'll tell you that. They say, you want this one. This one's much better. And it's $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,300. And you just go, oh, okay.
And that's, I mean, one of the reasons why I moved over to GSM carriers, AT&T and T-Mobile, was because they were easier to use if you wanted to buy an international phone or an unlocked phone or something like that. But, again, if the consumer does just a little bit of legwork, I think their sweat equity, their research time is well rewarded. There's a huge, my family is now super spread out. My dad likes his Pixel 2. My mom's on a OnePlus 6T. My sister and her husband are on Pixel 3As, the little $400 Pixel that came out at the beginning of the year. It's actually funny now that when we have group texts that it's the couple holdouts that are still on iPhones that are the problems for our group text. It's not the Android devices
That's
anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Because iMessage doesn't want to play with regular texts, and now they don't get messages like they should be.
Now, I thought on Apple now you could put your own text messaging apps on. I thought. I'm not sure.
I mean, there are always other messaging platforms and WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and stuff like that. But again, just straight up SMS. Those are people that have bought into the iMessage ecosystem. But as a few of my family members have sort of strayed from just what was conveniently offered right up in front of them. When they went to a carrier store, now it's the iPhone users who feel like they're getting left out, where it used to be the one or two people who were using Android.
Yep.
That's because I think, my mom is a computer scientist, so she kind of understands tech a little bit savvier than the average bear. Even my grandmother is very tech savvy for a woman her age. She duo calls on her iPad so she can talk to her great granddaughter.
Pretty good.
That's pretty good. I'm
that is
proud of great grandma there. So it's been easy for our family to start looking at that with a more rational eye. But I think that's a conversation that's starting to spread out amongst the general consumer public. It's actually something that the tech enthusiast scene is behind on, because consumers are the ones that are sort of driving this push towards mid-price products in that $500 to $700 territory, because that's what premium phones used to cost. That makes sense for a lot of people. That's where you should be spending your money, and that's where you get your best bang for buck.
Yep. That's good. Well, I hear music. We are...
Is it that time?
It's about that time. We only went 43 minutes, but Juan Carlos, always a pleasure to have you on and to share ideas
Pleasure
and talk. Love what you're doing on the podcast. You're doing a great job on it. It's always fun. And
thanks.
And I like when you go on your soapbox. I think it's fun. It's because a lot of people won't. And you know what's happening in the industry right now. Everybody's bought by somebody, so nobody says anything about anything.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing in this kind of environment where everyone's accusing each other of shilling. I always feel like Juan Carlos, like you're always looking out for the consumer. I think of you almost like almost like a kind of mini Consumer Reports of tech and like mobile gadgets and that sort of thing.
Well, thank you. That is very high praise, and I will endeavor to live up to that expectation.
It's hard to be independent nowadays, and you do a great job of it because everybody wants to be acquired. And being acquiring works for a while, but nobody's ever acquired very long. That's the problem.
We were talking before we jumped on camera. It's getting rough out there for a YouTuber. It's a pretty dicey marketplace right now.
Oh yeah.
Not fun sometimes, but there's no other platform yet that you could jump to that's really viable. At least big one.
You know what? I feel like this is a conversation we should have on its own show. Is if we can acknowledge that there's variation for consumer products, I think content creators could also start to look at how they can diversify and not be tied to one specific platform. Because that's, like I said, we were talking about that before we jumped on to the show too, and I think that might be interesting for some of your viewers also.
That's true. Not too many people are talking about that. So
it's a date.
Good.
We'll follow this up soon.
That sounds great. Well, Juan Carlos, have a great weekend. Thanks for coming on again. As always, we appreciate you, and keep up the great work. Always good stuff. We've been following you for a long time.
It's always fun.
That's why when you've left certain places, we're always going, where is he now? Oh, he's here. He's got his own thing. Good. It's always good. Yeah. Life without Juan Carlos isn't the same. So we appreciate you.
Guys. Well, that right back at you. And I've always loved your show, and I'm always excited to come in and like just rant for longer than I know you normally podcast.
No, we're good at that. No, believe me, our shows used to go for over an hour and a half sometimes, and we said, we got to stop this. You look at the stats, and it's like, no, everybody left after 5 minutes. What's going on? It's fun. It's fun to talk, and we're not owned by anybody, so we don't have any affiliate links. It's just we like to talk, and we like to get into it. So always a good conversation, and so we'll see you next time. If you're ever down in Camarillo way, give us a holler, and we'll have lunch or something.
Absolutely. Oh, definitely. And same. I mean, if you're up in my neck of the woods,
you're in the valley, right?
We'll make that happen. Yep. So if we're even if we might just be able to find some place to meet halfway, maybe we can pull off the LA compromise.
There's a place I want to go to again soon. If you've never had, I don't know if you've ever had Argentine food. There's a place in the valley, Buenos Aires Grill. I love that place. It's on Nordhoff.
Buenos Aires Grill is good. And then also,
you've been there.
If you like Argentinian, Lala's. Lala's is also...
Oh, Lala's. I know it by name. I haven't been there. I was born in Argentina.
Lomito with fries. I mean, they got that chimichurri on there.
And milanesas. Don't forget those.
Yes. Okay.
Good stuff.
Now I'm getting hungry. We're gonna have to make a food podcast happen.
That would be fun.
All right.
Fun. Anyway, well, you have a great one. And if you're watching the show, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, down, whatever. And we'll see you next week. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.